Good morning to my brothers and sisters throughout the Philippines. I bring you greetings and love from the Denver Church and from my own personal family. And I also want to offer my joyful congratulations on the 30th anniversary of the planting of the churches in Cebu City and Baguio City as well. I want to thank you, all of the churches in the Philippines, for the impact that you've had on the international churches of Christ throughout the world. Truly, you are a crown jewel in the kingdom of God. For the past 3 decades, you have lit the fire of our spiritual imagination time and time again. Our faith has been inspired by stories of miracles in the poorest of neighborhoods to the highest levels of government. You have called us higher to the compassion of Christ by your untiring work among those who are poor and vulnerable. Throughout the years, you have hosted Asian Christian Jubilees that have renewed the vision and the dreams of Christians who have attended from all over the world. I will never forget the service that we had at the Luneta Grandstand in Rizal Park. I was standing on the stage with Chester Maging, with Sasha Lopez, with others, and we looked out at a crowd that seemed to stretch to the horizon. Some estimated up to 100,000 people, the largest single gathering ever in the history of our movement. And so on behalf of churches around the world, and also of my own personal family, I want to thank you. I want to thank you and to tell you that we love you so much. Some of the most exciting and some most profound memories that my family has had are times that we spent with you in the Philippines. You've changed our lives. So again, thank you, and God bless you for all you've done. Now today, I was asked to speak on the topic of resilience. That's the kind of topic you get as you get old, and I am definitely getting old. The first trip that I had to Manila was in 1989. Yes, 31 years ago in 1989. We had planes back then. We didn't have cell phones, but we did have airplanes. I was 27, Erica was 25. We had 2 young children, 2 years old and a newborn. Today, I'm about to turn 59. I've been married 35 years to the amazing Erica Shinya Kim. We have 3 daughters, 2 very godly sons-in-laws. We have 5 grandchildren, and yes, Erica still looks 25. Now, in just a few weeks, I'm going to be celebrating my 40th spiritual birthday. 40 years as a disciple of Jesus. That's a long time. When I thought about spiritual resilience, the word that came to my mind right away was faithfulness. Faithfulness to go the distance. Faithful to the end. And so that's what I want to share with you today. A few simple lessons about faithfulness from the book of Deuteronomy. Now, Deuteronomy is a collection of Moses' last sermons, his final legacy. He was so compelled, I can imagine he was so motivated to do everything he could to help the Israelites to be successful as they launched into this next chapter of their walk with God. He inspired them, he motivated them, he taught them, he warned them, he urged them, and he pleaded with them. And the overarching theme of the book of Deuteronomy is about our faithfulness to God through obedience and trust. And yet, perhaps the underlying greater theme is God's faithfulness to us. His faithfulness to us is our inspiration for our faithfulness. It's the origin, it's the source of why we can be faithful to Him. So the depth and the strength and the resilience of our faith will ultimately depend on our confidence in the faithfulness of God. So first, I want to talk about how God is faithful and He's never forgetful. God is faithful and He's never forgetful. Let's look in chapter 8 of Deuteronomy and start reading in verse 1. Be careful to follow every command I'm giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Now, this is the beginning of the chapter. But Moses is laying a very important foundation. Don't miss it. What's the purpose of what Moses is preaching? What is the underlying purpose of everything God is trying to teach His people through Moses? He's saying, I want to bless you. I want you to flourish. I want you to grow and make a difference. Now keep in mind, God is saying this after having been let down time and time again, having been disappointed and even frustrated by His people over and over. And yet through it all, what do we see here? God is faithful. He continues to love them. It never changed. His belief in them never wavered. He says, I want to bless you. He is faithful. Now, here's the part that can confuse us. God wants to bless us. He's faithful to us. He's faithful to his desire for us to prosper and to grow. And yet, how does he go about it? Let's start reading in verse 2 again. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you. So how did God go about blessing them? Well, he uses words like he humbled you, tested you, taught you, disciplines you. Yahar, which is kind of an intense word in Hebrew, is chastising with blows or with words, correcting and instructing. It wasn't sort of this easygoing time. It wasn't what they expected. It was 40 years in the wilderness. Now, I've been a Christian for 40 years, and I can tell you it feels like a very long time. And I'm sure that as they wandered for 40 years in the wilderness, they were very tempted to think at times, are we lost? I mean, is this meaningless? Is anything important going on right here? What is happening in our lives? And yet, Moses says, the Lord your God led you. In other words, there was no mistake. Moses is saying God had a reason for everything. He sustained you every day. He directed you by cloud and fire every moment. He was faithfully at work in your life every step. How often they must have been tempted to feel, however, that they had been forgotten by God. Did he forget us? Did he forget his promise, his vision? Did he forget what he had in store for us to do? Does he even care? I have a question for you this morning. Are there times when you feel like God may have forgotten you? Maybe he forgot his promises to you. He forgot his love for you. You know, I asked this once several years ago in our house church, and it was filled with mature disciples, married people with kids, older singles. And they said, yeah, there are times when I feel forgotten by God. Like when I've lost my job, or when I've gotten very ill and can't recover, and I'm still ill after many prayers. When I've gone through deaths that have left a hole in my heart. When I've experienced trouble in my family or even in our church. Right now, the whole world is going through a pandemic. The COVID pandemic has changed everything in our daily lives, the way that we live. And it can be very challenging. I'm sure for some of us, we're scared. We're scared about getting sick ourselves. Others of us have lost loved ones, and we weren't able to be there to mourn, to comfort, to grieve together. For others, it's affected us economically as jobs have been lost and we have uncertainty about the future. So many of us, not just in the Philippines or in America, but all over the world, are experiencing anxiety like we never have before. And in times like this, it is so tempting to feel, has God forgotten? Have you forgotten me? Have you forgotten us? You know, it's a tricky thing to feel forgotten. We moved from Tokyo to Denver, Colorado, when my youngest daughter, Mimi, was only 5 years old. She had so many friends in Japan in her nursery school. And I remember one night, after we had been in America for about 2 months, she was going to bed, and I was putting her to bed. She grabbed a picture off the table, and it had a photo of her and her friends in nursery school. She had written all of her friends, but they hadn't written back. Now they're probably busy, or, mail takes a lot longer than a kid thinks. And so she sadly looked at me and said, Papa, all my friends have forgotten me. And so now I have to forget them as well. Well, that's the danger, isn't it? When we feel forgotten, then we also are tempted to forget. And when we feel like God has forgotten us, I know in my own personal life, there's a temptation to kind of forget about him as well. To say, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to do it on my own power, my own strength, my own way. We forget to thank God. We forget to obey God. We forget to rely on God. And yet, it is precisely so that we can come to the end of ourselves that God leads us in the wilderness. Because it is when we are humbled and there's no more that we can do on our own strength that we finally look up and see all that God can do. We are no longer limited by who we are, but we are empowered by all that God is. At this time, I'd like to ask my wife, Erica, to share a little bit about this topic.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica Kim. And yes, I am the wife of Frank, who you've been listening to until this moment. And he's been preaching a lot about how we can overcome through difficulties and challenges. And one of the things that I've had to overcome in my life is a disease, which I was diagnosed with when I was 25 years old, called systemic erythematosus lupus, SLE. And this disease basically almost took my life at the age of 27. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you Christians who've been around for many, many years, who fasted and prayed for me during that time, because without those prayers, I wouldn't have gone into remission. I went into remission from 1997 until 2001, and I'm so grateful for those years of remission. But since 2001, my lupus has been active. Well, fast forward January 2020, I switched doctors, and my new doctor wanted to take a blood test and do a full blood panel. And when I went back to find out my results in February, my doctor said, I'm sorry to inform you, but you have probably a white blood disorder. And you also have another disease called Sjogren's disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And I thought, oh my gosh, on top of my lupus, I have 2 more diseases. And then she said, you need to go see some specialists. I'll schedule you for March. And this is before COVID and the pandemic hit in the US. But when March hit, I went into the doctor, and the doctor said, yes, you have Sjogren's disease. And I said, but I don't have dry eyes and dry mouth. And she goes, yeah, those things, you might develop them later. And then my other doctor, who was a hematologist, said, yeah, you have this other disease called chronic immune neutropenia, which is a white blood cell disease. So this was very discouraging for me. And anyway, I started to update my book, Open My Eyes, Lord, Understanding the Spiritual World Around You. And I decided to add on a chapter called Miracles. And in order to finish my book and my chapter, I started to study out Miracles by Lee Strobel. And it was a really great book. And in the book, he talks about how people in poor countries pray more desperate prayers because they don't have access to medicine, medical care, and money as much as people in richer countries, where they can get doctors and care readily. And so the prayers of people in richer countries are more like, God, please be with the doctor, help them to take care of me and do a great job and helping me to do better. Whereas people in poor countries just pray desperate prayers of like, God, just work a miracle, heal my mom of her cancer, and heal my dad of this debilitating disease, and then they get healed. And he said that in poor countries, they see way more miracles. Well, this made me think about my prayers. And Frank and I started praying, going on prayer walks during the pandemic, because there was not much to do anyway. So we prayed every day for an hour during our walks. And during my prayer times, I realized I've got to pray desperate prayers for miracles. Prayers not just that God would give me the right doctor to help me to feel better, but that God would completely heal me. So we started doing these prayer walks, and I went on this campaign called No More Lame Prayers. And so those are the kind of prayers that I decided to do. God, heal me. Do whatever it takes, because in my life I have seen very few miracles personally. Small ones, but not like big ones like some people experience. And so fast forward, I go in for my doctor's appointment near the end of March. And she says, okay, well, let me see how you're progressing and what's happened, because, after your diagnosis. And she looks at my blood work, and I said, so how's my lupus doing? So I didn't even think to ask that question, before, but I decided to ask her this time. And she said, what lupus? And I go, my lupus. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 25, and I just want to know how my lupus is doing. And she said, you don't have lupus. And I go, no, you have made a mistake on the blood test. And I actually argued with my doctor for good 5 minutes. And so she agreed to retest my blood. And she said, I'm doing a DNA test. And on the DNA test, both times, it came out negative, that I had no lupus anymore. And so God worked a miracle. I thought, no more lame prayers. So guys, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for praying for me, for fasting for me, and for always encouraging me when I was sick, because now I'm healed. And so never give up. There's a miracle in there for each one of us. Maybe it won't come for years. Maybe it won't come right away. But God does work miracles. Thank you.
I've got to say, Erica is my spiritual hero. She's gone through things that I haven't had to experience personally, and she's done it faithfully and relying on God. And I'm just so thankful to have such an example in my life and in my children's lives like her. And together we want to thank all of you, because we know you have prayed so much for us and for her through the years. And so this is an answer to your prayers. Thank you so much. The second thing I'd like to share with you today is that God is faithful even when we are not. Even when we're not. Now let's look in chapter 8, verses 6 through 10. Observe the commands of the Lord your God, walking in obedience to him and revering him. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks and streams and deep springs gushing out into the valleys and hills, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil and honey, a land where bread will not be scarce and you will lack nothing, a land where the rocks are iron and you can dig copper out of the hills. And when you have eaten or satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land that he has given you. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God. Wow. When you read about that, it's amazing. But can you imagine reading or hearing those words after wandering in the wilderness for 40 years? That would blow your mind. Now, as a young Christian, when I read the book of Deuteronomy, my overriding impression was God was all about rules and obeying them. But now, after 40 years of walking with God and getting to know him, I see and read Deuteronomy from a different set of eyes. I see the grace of God, that he has such a dream for us. He has such a plan for us. It's interesting, when you go through the book of Deuteronomy, it comes up over and over again. In chapter 6, verses 11 and 12, it talks about how when God brings you, well, first of all, he talks about how God sets them free from Egypt. He sets them free from slavery. He saves them. For what? He saves them for cities that they did not build. He gives them houses filled with things that they did not provide. He gives them wells that they did not dig, vineyards and olive groves that they did not plant. He satisfies their deepest needs and their desires. I don't know what you call that. I call that grace. In chapter 7, he says, why did I choose you in the first place? In verse 7, he says, the Lord did not set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it was because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your ancestors that he brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love. So this people that God loved, that he saved, that he blessed. Why did he choose them? Because. Because he set his affection on them. Because he's a gracious God. And yet, what about this people? We're not going to read it today, but in Deuteronomy chapter 9, just go through the first half of that chapter. It just talks, it's a sad history. It's about a people who messed up. It's about a people who failed, not once, but over and over again. A people who forgot, a people who rebelled, a people who complained, who were arrogant and prideful. And yet, God never left them. Day and night, he was faithful. Yes, he disciplined them, but why? To teach them and to prepare them for more blessing. That's grace. He also sustained them. He protected them. He loved them. That's grace. Even in their failure, God was faithful to his people. And even in our failure, God is faithful to us. If there's one lesson that has helped me the most to stay fresh, to stay motivated, to stay joyful in my walk with God, it's this. God is faithful in my failures. He is faithful even when I'm not. I have a question for you today. Are you secure and confident in your salvation? And if not, why not? You know, after 40 years of being a Christian, I have to say, I don't doubt that God is faithful to me. That's really not my issue. And I've talked to many of my friends who are 30 years as a Christian, 40 years as a Christian, and they tend to say the same thing. But we still have doubts. Not about God. Our doubts are often about us. God might be faithful, but I'm the problem. I'm the one who sins. I'm the one who fails. You know, so often when I look back at my life, I can't believe that God still loves me and he still believes in me. I've had thousands of quiet times over the last 4 decades. And I've also missed thousands of quiet times. Sometimes gone weeks without really taking the time to properly read or to pray. I've given up money and possessions and comfort and even relationships for God. And I've also been incredibly selfish, worldly, and greedy. I've been married 35 years to the most incredible woman. And I've also fallen countless times into lust and impurity. And I've hurt my wife probably more than any other person in the world. I've been insensitive and I've been selfish and in ways that have hurt her deeply. I've had countless family devotionals with my children. I put them to bed, I read them stories, and even as they become adults, I've reached out to them. And yet I've also been a terrible example many times. I've lost my temper. I've acted hypocritically. I've failed a lot in these 40 years. And the fact that I'm still here today has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with God. He is faithful in his grace. The fact that I've been married for 35 years has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with grace. The grace of God and the grace of Erica. The fact that my disciples, my daughters are disciples of Jesus. It's grace. Everything I have, my work, my health, my life, all my relationships, it's all just a gift of God's grace. Because I failed over and over and over again. But God is faithful. We don't deserve our blessings. We didn't earn them. It's just the faithfulness of God, who never stops believing in us, never stops loving us, never stops working in our lives. He never pulls away his grace. So faithfulness is not about my perfection. Faithfulness is all about God's grace. And I just want to say something very important that has helped me so much over the years, that I've finally come to grapple with and embrace. It's simply this. There is no doghouse in God's grace. No doghouse. You know what a doghouse is? It's when you put the dog in there, you put a person in a doghouse to make them really feel bad and to stew in their sin and realize their mistake and sort of just do penance and punishment. It's like jail. But God's grace doesn't have that. You know, often in the past, because of the way I was built and my upbringing, if I failed, if I sinned, I would just go into a guilt trip. At first, I'd be prideful because I didn't want to admit it because I knew how painful it would be to admit it. And then once I admitted it, I would go into a tailspin and I'd just be so guilt-ridden and burdened. I'd lose my confidence. I'd lose my security. And I didn't know if I was even saved sometimes. And I'd just try to earn back God's favor. But you know what God says? I don't have a doghouse. I paid the price. So what do I want from you? I don't want you to pay me again. I want you to try. I want you to get up. Humbled? Yes, be humbled. Guilt-ridden? No. Get up and try again. So we're all going to fail. You and me, we're going to mess up. And we need to take it seriously. We need to get help. And we need to get up and get going. You know, understanding this has saved me days and weeks and maybe months of my life that I normally would have spent down on myself without confidence because I felt guilt-ridden. You know, I don't want to give Satan another minute or another day of my life. I want to be able to get up and give it back all to God because of his grace towards me. So today, I don't know where you're at, but I ask you, trust in his faithfulness. Ask God to change you. Ask him to give you strength. Get the help you need, but get up and be faithful to him because he's faithful to you. His grace is there for you. I'd like to actually have my son-in-law share a little bit of his story and how he got back up and he went back to God.
Hi, my name is Jason, the son of Bruce and Robin Williams. I grew up in the church and was baptized at age 14. As a Christian in high school and college, I saw God do amazing things. However, toward the end of my senior year of college, I began to doubt God's goodness toward me after a disappointing end to a relationship. I ended up leaving God and delved deep into the world of drugs, women, and drinking. Needless to say, this crushed my parents. I could tell they didn't know what to do, but they were willing to do whatever it took to help me come back. My dad was always wanting to spend time together. He would often ask me how I was doing spiritually and if I was ready to come back. I remember one day telling him that I don't want to talk about it, and if you continue to talk about it, then we won't have a relationship. It was around then that he began asking me what he needed to change. He asked for my forgiveness for anything and everything in the past. Even though it was me who was hard-hearted and had the issues with God, he made it about what he needed to change and not what I needed to. I began to notice a big change in him. He was more humble, loving, and expressive. Even though he knew I was on my spiritual journey, he never stopped reaching out to me and insisting on being together. We'd meet up at least bi-weekly to play racquetball and would take annual fishing trips together. I remember one time some friends of mine were planning a trip to Vegas and asked if I wanted to go. I told them how badly I wanted to go, but my dad was wanting to go on this fishing trip together. I'll never forget my friend's response. He said, "Wow, your dad actually wants to spend time with you? I wish my dad was like that. I don't even talk to him." I felt my heart begin to turn back toward my parents, and my perspective on life began to change as well. I thought to myself, "Jason, you are so ungrateful and have no idea just how awesome your dad is." I still had a long way to go before coming back to God, but God began moving in my heart. My parents said that although it was a scary prayer to pray, they prayed, "God, do whatever you need to do to bring Jason back to you. Just spare his life." They also enlisted as many people as possible to pray for me. I believe that it was through all those prayers that God began to work in my life. After a night in Hollywood with a girl I was trying to impress, we were pulled over for a broken taillight in a brand new car I just bought. The police gave me a field sobriety test, and after failing, placed me in handcuffs, sat me down on the curb, and put her in a cab home. I began to think, what are you doing with your life? This isn't how you were raised. The very next day, Marco Pellizzeri showed up at my place of work. I fell into his arms and told him I wanted to study the Bible. See, I believe that night God responded to all those many prayers, and caused that taillight to go out. Fortunately, it wasn't a paralyzing accident, but it was enough to cause me to question the path I was on. He drew me back with cords of kindness and grace. Since my repentance and coming back, God has lavished his blessings upon me. He gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams, a beautiful wife in Miyoko, and our incredible new son, Lincoln. If your son or daughter has left God, I want to encourage you to not give up praying for them, enlisting others to pray for them, and be willing to change whatever you need to change for them. Your love, prayers, and humility will make a difference.
You know, I love Jason's story because, first of all, his parents are heroes. They weren't paralyzed. They weren't guilt-ridden. They just changed, and they trusted in God's grace. May we all be like them. But I also love about Jason. You know, he came out of that time like a rocket, totally devoted to God. And he's remained that way. And he married my daughter. They have 3 beautiful sons. They're raising a spiritual family. They're having an impact on people around them in our church and literally in other churches where they have many friends. God's not done with him. See, God had a belief and a vision for Jason, but most of all, he had grace. He was faithful, and now Jason is being faithful. And isn't that what God wants from each one of us? Now, lastly, today I want to say that God is faithful to our future. God is faithful to our future. Now, as I've shared with you, Eric and I are grandparents, and that's one of the greatest parts about getting older, in my opinion. Someone once said that grandchildren are your reward for putting up with your kids when they were young. Now, if I don't want to say anything like that, I love my kids. I loved every minute with my kids, but that's a kind of funny way of looking at it. Anyways, there is another aspect of getting older that I also want to share. You know, in Psalm 116, verse 15, it says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." One aspect of getting older is we start losing people who are very, very dear to us, who go on ahead of us to their heavenly reward. I think about Eric and my spiritual parents, George and Irene Gerganis, waiting in heaven for us. I think about Gloria Baird. You know, we had the privilege and the joy of traveling to see you in 2012 with the Bairds and teach parenting classes and marriage classes and about eldership. And Gloria passed away a couple years ago, and it was so sad. And yet we know that she is joyfully dancing by Jesus' side. Peers like Scott Green, who was in my wedding, passed away. Ron Markham, a very dear friend that I baptized in Tokyo, passed away just 2 weeks ago. And my daughter, Mimi, was talking to me. She says, "Papa, has this been kind of tough on you with all these deaths?" And I said, "Yes, honey, I think it has been really tough on me. But I kind of feel like this is my new way of life from this point forward because of my age." So I know there's an end to the race for me. And I'm getting closer to that end every day. But I also know when I look at my grandkids that there's a future. I may not be around to see it myself, but I have the blessing of loving those who will. So I can say that as time has gone on, I've become so much more purposeful about my life. And the purpose is no longer about me. It's about these guys. What church will they grow up in? What faith will they have? How much love and passion will they have for Jesus? You know, I think God is focused on that as well. There are so many scriptures in Deuteronomy about generations and the importance of future generations. Let's look in Deuteronomy chapter 6. "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life." Let's go to verse 4. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up." And let's go to verse 20. in the future when your son asks you, what is the meaning of the stipulations, decrees, and laws the Lord our God has commanded you? Tell him, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. This is a theme that goes from the beginning to the end of Deuteronomy. And it's the theme of passing on our faith to the future generations. You know, today time does not permit me to expand on this topic like I really would love to. But I want to say this. Building strong families in the church is everyone's role and everyone's responsibility. And everyone in the church should feel like they're a part of a family. You know, the marrieds, we need to include singles in our families. And singles, we need you to love up on our youth. Older disciples, we need to learn from your experiences and from your wisdom and, yes, from your mistakes. And younger disciples, we need you to serve and encourage and to learn from those of us who have had more experiences and made more mistakes. And all of us need to be devoted together to raising up our children in love and in faith. I want to have one of our singles share about his experiences in being a part of the family of God.
My name is Kevin McBride, and I was baptized in the campus ministry in 2012. My sister and I, we were raised by a single mom, and she really loved us. But the God-given role of a father was never filled. And I know I never had the love, the guidance, and really the example of a father that I always really longed for. But I believe through the body of Christ, God provided for me. You know, there are older men in the church that saw my need and decided they want to invest in me. And as they brought me into their homes and into their lives, I got to see a biblical example of these men leading boldly. I even got to become like a big brother in their families. And I got to share in their joy as 4 of my little brothers made Jesus Lord just this past year. You know, seeing God work through these families and bless them, I think it's given me a vision. It's given me a vision for what my family could be like one day. And I'm confident it's a vision I'd never have unless these men had stepped up and brought me into their lives. I know I'll always be thankful to God for these men and for their families because they've made an impact in my life and they shaped who I am as a disciple, who I am as a husband, and who I could be as a father and hope to be one day.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, you know, Kevin, when he actually made that video for me, it was a couple of years ago, was single. Today, Kevin is married. And he and his wife have a beautiful baby girl. And they're in our preschool parenting discussion group. And it's just so cool to see this young man who didn't have a father growing up and didn't know the Lord growing up, now being able to start his own spiritual home because of the lessons he learned while giving to other people's children. So ultimately, God calls all of us to raise up our children in the faith, but especially parents. And how do we do it? Well, go back and read the scripture again. It's the Shema. We worship one God. We love him with all of our heart and our soul and our strength, and then we live it out in a way that impresses upon our children the reality and the power and the joy of knowing God. So today, as we close out, I want you to think about these lessons. That God is faithful and is never forgetful. That God is faithful even when we fail. And that God is faithful for our future. Remember the story of Deuteronomy. The Israelites failed over and over and over again. But God did not give up on them. Despite their weaknesses, God remained faithful in his vision for them. And despite their failures, God brought them to the promised land. How? Because they passed on their faith to their children. So thank you for allowing me to be with you today. It's been an honor. It's been a blessing. Eric and I send our love and our prayers again, and we look forward to meeting with you in person in the near future, Lord willing. We love you.